Before talking about Matthew 24, verse 45, I want to give some more supporting evidence on the identity of the chosen ones. I'm going to read to you 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, where Peter is addressing the anointed Christians of the first century. He says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for special possession, that you should declare abroad the excellencies of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." I'm also using these scriptures to show that these chosen ones are the same as the anointed, 144,000, and the remaining seed of the woman in Revelation chapter 12, and also are referred to as the bride of Jesus Christ. When I read chosen ones, what was coming to my mind was the word firstfruits, and I was trying to find the scripture. So I went to the index and looked up to see if I could find the word firstfruits. Actually, it was a glossary, and it was interesting what it says. I'm going to read it to you. Firstfruits, the earliest fruits of a harvest season. The first results or products of anything. Jehovah required the nation of Israel to offer their first fruits to him, whether it be of man, animal, or the fruitage of the ground. That came to my mind, the sacrifice that Cain offered and Abel offered. Cain was offering the produce. As a nation, the Israelites offered first fruits to God at the festival of unleavened bread and at Pentecost. The term first fruits was also used figuratively of Christ and his anointed followers. They were the first fruits. And the scriptural background, supporting scriptures, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 23, which I'm going to read to you in context, because I thought the context was very interesting. So I'm going to be reading from verse 20 of 1 Corinthians 15. And this has to go further on what I was talking about, the resurrection of these anointed ones. However, now Christ has been raised up from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep in death. For since death is through a man, resurrection of the dead is also through a man. For just as in Adam all are dying, so also in the Christ all will be made alive. But each one in his own rank, Christ the first fruits, afterward those who belong to the Christ during his presence. That's interesting, is going back on that word presence again. And it's got a footnote to the word presence. Next, the end, when he hands over the kingdom to his God and Father, when he has brought to nothing all government and all authority and power, for he must rule as king until God has put all enemies under his feet. As the last enemy, death is to be brought to nothing. So it's saying that those have been, Christ was the first fruits to die, but all will be made alive, but each one in his own rank. Christ the first fruits, afterward those who belong to Christ during his presence. I'm going to read the other verses. Revelation 14, verse 4. Again, I'm trying to show that these expressions, chosen ones, first fruits, anointed, 144,000, are all referring to the same group that are going to go to heaven and rule as kings and priests over those that are on the earth. And those that are on the earth are everybody that died before Jesus Christ, all the good people, Abraham, David, who are not going to heaven. Revelation chapter 12. Sorry, let me just, actually I got that wrong. Revelation 14 verse 4, yes. I'm going to read verse 3 also because it helps establish identity here. And they were singing as if a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one was able to master that song, but the 144,000 who have been bought from the earth. Verse 4. These are the ones that did not defile themselves with women. In fact, they are virgins. These are the ones that keep following the Lamb no matter where he goes. They were bought from among mankind as firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And just to drive home something else, I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 6 and read to you some verses. Because I found that Revelation chapter 6 really ties in with Matthew chapter 24. And chapter 6 and chapter 7. This is the horseman ride. There's the four horsemen of the apocalypse. There where John sees the white horse, the fiery colored horse. There was like a black horse with they were, they had all these plagues for the earth. Again, they were supposed to be like representing the tribulation that mankind will be facing at the end of the world. Chapter 6, verse 12 here. I'm going to read chapter 6, verse 12, because this sounds a lot like what Jesus Christ was saying after the tribulation. And I saw when he opened the sixth seal, and a great earthquake occurred, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the entire moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as when a fig tree shaken by a high wind casts its unripe figs. And the heaven departed as a scroll that is being rolled up, and every mountain and every island were removed from their places. I'm going to go down a few verses. It says, 16, fall over us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Chapter 7. After this I saw four angels standing upon the four corners of the earth, holding tight the four winds of the earth, that no wind might blow upon the earth or upon the sea or upon any tree. Verse 3, saying, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until, this is so much like Matthew 24, until after we have sealed the slaves of our God in their foreheads, or the chosen ones. And verse 4, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe. So as Jesus was saying, that unless those days were cut short, they would be cut short on account of the chosen ones. No flesh would survive. Who are these chosen ones? Revelation is saying that these anointed, sealed slaves numbered 144,000. That God was keeping safe here. And just to drive that point home further, I'm going to read to Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. I want to get further into Revelation chapter 12 in a later video, and talk a little bit about the 1914. So Revelation chapter 12 is a famous chapter where it's describing the dragon, and then it's very much connected to the presence of Christ and this idea of Satan having a short period of time to mislead the earth. Verse 17. And the dragon grew wrathful at the woman, and went off to wage war with the remaining ones of her seed, who observe the commandments of God and who have the work of bearing witness to Jesus. So I was using this verse to show that that these anointed ones are the seed of Christ, of the seed of the woman, that the devil is at war with here. Okay, so the point I was trying to make is that Matthew 24 definitely does have an application for the future, and these chosen ones, these anointed ones, they're also referred to. The 144,000 collectively are called the bride of Jesus Christ. He gives these illustrations later in Matthew. I think maybe even the let me see, chapter 24, chapter 20. Oh yeah, right. The very next chapter, 25, he's talking about the 10 virgins, and he's talking. He talks about this wedding feast. These illustrations where these virgins they're foolish and they don't have oil for their lamps and stuff. You can see that Christ is preparing a bride that is faithful, that is true, that is holy. This priesthood. Israel failed as a nation. God is turning his attention to earth, and he's forming a bride that is out of all nations. The Jews are no longer God's special nation. Jehovah entered in with the nation of Israel into a covenant where they were his wife, and now Christ, the Son of God, has his own wife, figurative wife, which is I'll talk a little bit more about these brides in a later discussion. So now I think there's enough context on Matthew 24. I will get into chapter to verse 45, where he talks about the faithful and discreet slave, and I will talk about that. Thank you.